and welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Brother Ghoulish himself, Ryan Kinney. He is a content curator and the host of the Brother Ghoulish's Tomb podcast, where he shares horror stories and reviews movies. He's also one of the co-hosts of the newly launched Blurty Massacre, the podcast. Welcome to the show!
Thank you. Woo!
The crowd goes wild.
Congratulations on Blurty Massacre, by the way. I saw the numbers are doing great. I think you have y'all have an incredible cast of hosts. Like, congratulations on launching a new podcast. It is so stressful to launch a podcast.
It is. Thank you, first of all. But I feel like I have like the best co-hosts. Like they're just amazing. Like we have a lot of fun doing it. We're always joking and it's magical, but thank you.
Sheree is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my entire life. So I just feel like every time anything with her, a project with her is going to have it be funny at the very least.
Oh yeah, she's so hilarious. Like it's like all the laughing I have to cut out in between things when I'm editing. It's just like, cause we get to going and that's it.
That's so awesome. And I love Zero. Like, Zero is just, when I saw the three of you, I was like, it's like, perfect. Cannot wait. But
Trifecta.
Before we... Yeah, exactly. But before we do get to that, let's take it all the way back to the beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
I actually got introduced to horror really early because I grew up in a horror household. So my father loved Blackula and movies from that time period.
Okay.
And my older brother, who had a huge impact on a lot of the horror that I saw, including this one, he was into horror really deep. My mom likes her horror, but it's not like on the same level. But she also was in a house where she wanted 3 girls and ended up with 3 boys, and we all just like horror. So she just kind of went with the flow.
Yeah.
So it was really early. I typically tell people my first horror movie was Scream because that's the first one that I like snuck to go watch by myself and fell in love with. But I had seen so much stuff before that. So, you know, I think about like horror anthology TV shows like The Outer Limits and Twilight Zone. And a lot of that stuff scared me, but I loved all of it.
How old were you when you started watching it? Like, before, I guess as soon as you could remember, basically. It sounds like your dad was probably showing you horror, like, at the youngest age possible.
So my father showed me a few things, but some of the stuff I wanted to see that he was watching, he wouldn't actually allow me to watch it.
Okay.
And so it was always a slippery slope. And I knew he was trying to protect me because the Tales from the Hood is one of the ones where I literally was told not to watch it. And I watched it anyway, and it actually scared me really, really bad. And I was like, damn, he was right.
That's always the worst. You're like, fuck. God damn it, they were right. It was scary. Shit. I can't tell them I'm scared. But I'm so scared.
Oh, yeah. Like, yeah.
So what were some of your favorites growing up? What kind of movies did you gravitate to?
When I was younger, and you're talking about just in horror or just generally speaking?
Horror. Yeah.
So in horror, definitely Scream. Like, I was obsessed with that film. I was obsessed with, I'm trying to remember some other horror movies that I just really, really liked. I liked a lot of horror comedies. So like I liked Dracula Dead and Loving It. It was really, really funny to me.
Oh my God. Dracula Dead and Loving It. I an unabashed fan of it. There is like, there's a scene. I don't know if you've watched it in a while or if you remember. Like I used to have this movie memorized.
Yeah,
okay.
I saw it like a couple weeks ago.
The raspberries? Raspberries? There are raspberries here. That moment is constantly, I constantly quote it around my house. My roommate has a dog and he goes around going, and it reminds me so much of him going raspberries. And so I'll go around walking and saying that to him. So I'm so happy that there's another Dracula Dead and Loving It fan.
Oh, it's the best. I turned my partner onto it because he had never seen it, and I was like, we're changing that today, and I purchased it and I showed it to him, and he actually found it funny as well.
It's so good.
Is he into horror? Is your partner into horror?
Oh yeah, like when we first started dating, like one of our first date nights, because I had never seen Hellraiser when I met him.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, we're gonna change that, and I was like, you know what? You're the one for me, because like he literally turned me on to Hellraiser, and it was just.
That's love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like, first date movie Hellraiser, you know it's also love when someone's like, oh no, we're gonna show you Hellraiser, like in the early stages of dating, and you're like, Thank you. You are the kind of person that I'd like to have in my life.
I almost cried. I was like, damn. You introduced me to Julia? Like, this is too much.
You brought that icon into your life. Okay, I will not get on my... I love Julia. I just love her so much. But anyway.
Queer icon.
It's queer icon. But what were some of the movies that really scared you as a kid, aside from the one that we're talking about today?
Communion.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh.
Communion messed me up. And it was so bad that I actually had a phobia of aliens for like years and years. And I was afraid to watch the film. I literally only got over my fear of that film like a couple months ago because I was like, I'm being ridiculous. Like, I have to watch it. It can't be as scary as I remember it. And I'm happy I did because it wasn't as scary as I remember it. But in my mind,
the movie's actually quite campy.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty bad movie.
Oh, it's terrible. I'm obsessed with it. It's awful. But I can understand as a child seeing it and being like, fuck this. Like, absolutely not. Because aliens, like alien abduction. So you were scared of alien abduction, basically. Was that a thing when you were a kid?
Yes.
That shit haunted my dreams. I was always scared I was going to get abducted. I was like, it's going to be me. They will choose me in my suburban Maryland neighborhood to abduct me.
But it's always like a suburb like that. Like like this area, I could see a UFO. I'm not putting it in my head. Never mind. I just got over this.
I was going to say something, but we're going to move on. I don't want to reinstate an absolute terror of aliens and UFOs into your life.
So what other movies?
The other one I think was called Body Parts. I think that's what it was called. But the art is in my head, but I might be calling it the wrong thing. It was about this guy who he had like a hand transplant from a murderer. And then like the hand had an urge to kill. So he just kept killing people. Frightening. I don't.
Is this the art? Can you see my phone?
Yeah.
It is called Body Parts.
It is.
It's incredible.
That movie scared the hell out of me. So
I've actually never seen that.
Brad Dourif's in it, everybody.
Wait, you said who's in it?
Brad Dourif, Chucky himself, is in it.
I changed it to someone else in my head. I gotta rewatch that as well.
Oh no, he's not the lead guy. He's just in it. He's just in the cast. Sorry, pardon me. I just got excited seeing his name on the cast. Oh, the log line is the transplant was a success. Then the donor came to take it back.
Oh my god,
that's terrible. That's so bad. I gotta rewatch.
I was gonna say I want to watch this immediately. Wow, that is absolutely incredible.
Did you get scared easy as a kid?
Yeah. Yeah. I had to think about it like objectively, and I did. I used to get pranked all the time, and so the only way to kind of stop getting pranked, I had to get tougher because they knew I was like Carly Beth from Goosebumps, and they were giving it to me on a regular, and I couldn't take it.
Carly Beth. So as an adult, do you get scared watching horror movies anymore, or have you outgrown that?
Rarely. It actually takes a lot for me to get afraid of a horror movie. And I'm sure y'all relate to this too, because a lot of like horror movies, when they put the trailers out, they'll say things like, oh, this is the scariest film, and people were passing out in the theaters. And I'm like, am I dead inside? Because I'm watching these films and I don't feel any of this.
Yeah, I remember time in my early 20s where I would get psyched up before a movie came out because I would see that, be like, oh my god, and the movie would either like I would feed into that like hysteria and get super scared, or be like, that was not scary, or I'd be really disappointed. And now it's just like, I know people that write this that write that statement. It's like, no.
But what was the last movie that did scare you, though? Do you remember?
Oh, yes. Because it scared me so bad that I had shockwaves. And I didn't remember feeling that since a kid. And it was, it was Host on Shudder. That movie was the last one. It got me. It got me really, really good. And I was mad at myself because I felt like in retrospect, I should have seen it coming. But since I didn't, I screamed. I actually screamed in my living room. And I was like, oh, like I like threw myself back. And like my fiance was like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm really not.
Okay. That's a good choice. That movie.
It scared the shit out of me because like, I love found footage and all that stuff. I had like low-ish expectations. no, it's not anyone's fault. It's just the way we are now as horror people and like being scared. I watched it and I jumped and I screamed and I actually had to turn the lights on. Like, it was incredible. I loved it, which is, I love it. I love talking about this stuff because, like, I was so scared. I was so happy. I love being scared. But it, like, especially because of the pandemic, and like it really like hit those fears really well, without being super like torture, like kind of emotional manipulation.
Yes,
pandemic-y. But holy shit, that movie's incredible, and it's so short.
I think everything you're talking about is what was so perfect about it. Like it being the length of a Zoom call, it hitting at the time that it did, so it was relatable. It wasn't cheesy, and like you said, it also wasn't like, I don't remember, like it didn't exploit what we were all going through. Like it wasn't so much about the pandemic that you couldn't just have that escapism while still being afraid and relating to it. It was in a perfect balance. Like it's a gem.
Yeah. It really is.
is.
I also love that it was based on that short that Rob Savage posted, that he when he pranked his friends, and he ended up, the prank video did so well on like social media that it became Host, which I think is cool as shit.
About this.
Yeah, he was like doing like a Zoom
in
call and like held up the laptop into it because he was like putting it in the attic, and he's spliced in footage from Wreck. There's a zombie jump out scare, and then pretend like he fell and died, and his friend's like, what just happened there? And it was such a good moment. It's out on Twitter somewhere. It's so good.
And like all the people in the call were the people in Host. Like they're all friends in real life, so it was cool as shit. Pandemic creativity, everybody. Some good things came out of this nightmare.
So what are some of your favorite horror movies as an adult now?
A lot of my favorites are films from like the early aughts, and also films that are like fresh and like switching up something currently. So like my top my tops are like Scream, Get Out, Silence of the Lambs, American Psycho. It's a lot of them, but those are like the top ones. I like The Taking of Deborah Logan. I actually think it's like a perfect like horror film. I like It Follows. I know some people don't really like that film, but I actually think it was pretty cool.
We are an It Follows loving podcast.
Okay.
We are here. I love that movie so much.
And Black Swan. I feel like that's one of the best films I've seen in a very long time. I love Black Swan. I love that film. It can do no wrong.
I love it.
And it's a horror movie. I know people don't want to call it a horror movie because it's like that whole elevated bullshit, but it's a horror movie.
It is a horror movie.
I will hear.
Someone tried to hit me with that too. They also tried to hit me with the same person. Scream isn't a horror movie, and I'm like, just I'm
get out of here.
I'm good. You stay over there.
You know, I'm gonna have to say, there's really not an argument to be made there. I don't really look. Interpretation, but it's literally a movie making fun of horror. Whatever. You know what? We know. We all know. We all know. But kind of jumping into all of your like awesome creative work, I'm curious, how did you come up with the name Brother Ghoulish? Because that's kind of like your persona online with your content, and I'm curious where you came up with the name.
So I came up with Brother Ghoulish and the name of the podcast and the tagline all at once. I was just sitting on the bed behind my fiance, and I'm very goofy. I'm extremely imaginative, silly. I'm like a big kid, and
we'll talk about that in a moment too, because.
Okay, so I was just because I wanted to start a podcast. I knew that, and I knew it had to be about horror. I knew that, and people in my life who are friends of mine, they were actually telling me you should do a podcast or a YouTube or something, because I'm just silly. Like, that's just who I am to my friends. That's the value piece that I add to our circles. And so I was just telling Mill, like, what am I going? Oh, sorry. His name is Emilio. I'll call him Mill. So I was like, I really want to do this. He's like, well, what are you going to name yourself? And I was like, well, it has to be something spooky, and it also has to have like a touch of our culture in it. Like it has to be something like that. And I was like, do you like Brother Ghoulish? And he was like, I love it. And I was like, can you imagine like me on the microphone, like, Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brother Ghoulish's Tomb, where it's all about the brains. I'm your host, Brother Ghoulish. This is a podcast for the undead. And I just did the whole thing. And he was like, did you write that? And I was like, no. He said, can you please write? Because I say stuff like this and I don't write it down. Oh. He's like, just write it down. Like, I think that's a great idea. And he's my biggest supporter. Like, him and my mom, like, when I put out anything, my mom will call me and she'll always just say, like, I listened to what you were on and blah, blah, blah. And so whenever they go up for something, sometimes I don't meet them there. But this was a case where, because I'm really hard on myself, I'm super, super critical. But this was a time where I was like, you know what? Yeah, I really like it. So I just stayed with it. I didn't second guess myself. And Brother Ghoulish was born.
But I love that. You were just like, here it is, right off the top of the dome. That is incredible. And the intro? What the fuck? You got the intro right away, too?
Do you know how long we sat there coming up with, like, everything with our podcast, just agonizing over it, and here you are just like, blah, 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 blah.
I got it. I know. Terry and I sitting there for, like, an hour trying to figure out 2 sentences on how to introduce the fucking podcast.
I go, like, in both polarities, though, because for some stuff I am like that. Like, some stuff I get stuck, and I can't, like, shake it loose. But I was like a theater kid growing up, so like the theatricality and stuff is just very normal to me. Like that's just my vibe. But I don't know why that happened, and I need that to happen again because and let it be lottery numbers this time. I mean, Brother Ghoulish is cool. But I would
also
give
me that money.
I would like some.
We all know that podcasts don't make any money.
Right.
Sorry, guys. Podcasting is fun, but it is for passion, not for money.
Oh, yeah. It's for the love, people. This is a labor of love, believe.
This is a labor of love. You lose money podcasting for the most part.
Tell me about it. This microphone is more than any CPM will ever give me. Even if I did it like as an affiliate thing. Like if I say y'all go buy this, it still ain't enough to buy this damn thing.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Yep.
So can you tell us just a little bit about what your podcast, your Brother Ghoulish podcast is about?
Sure. So Brother Ghoulish's Tomb is, I share horror film reviews and I share horror short stories that I've written. And to date, each horror story has a gay black lead like myself, because a big piece of what I wanted to do is I wanted to like talk critically about the genre because, you know, I am a fan. I grew up in it, but I also wanted to create something that was the change I wanted to see. And I've always wanted to see myself like represented in different types of horror, or someone that looks and loves like me. So that's why on there I've shared things like a guy fighting against a pair of killer thighs and a mall slasher. And because I'm also someone who I like to laugh and have a good time as well. So that was pretty much what Brother Ghoulish's Tomb became. And for season 3, which I'm working on now, I'm actually going to stop sharing short stories for a bit of time, just because I am working on releasing my first book, which I finished recently, and I'm trying to start writing my second one. So I don't want to, I want to focus on one project at a time when I'm writing, is what I'm trying to say.
That's smart. I don't know how to do that, so tell me how you do that.
I don't know either. Please send help.
SOS, why are we like this? Help. So wait, okay, books, fiction, short stories, what is it? Tell me everything.
Can you talk about it yet?
Yeah.
Can you talk about it?
Oh, no. So the name of the book is There's Something Wrong in Morganton County, and all the stories that are in Brother Ghoulish's Tomb season 1 and 2, they're actually interrelated, and there's some hints to it in different little places, but the one commonality is that they're in or around the suburbs of fictional Maryland, Morganton County. And the reason that all the leads are gay black men and they're facing these horrors is because of this entity called the Brood King. And he's actually, I don't want to spoil it. I think, I want people to crack the case, because I don't actually reveal it in this book. In the second one, I'll probably play around and keep the answer a little bit further. But, that's what it's about. It's just it's 9 different stories across time as well, because one of the stories is in Morganton County, but it's 100 years later. and there's zombies, and people have found out that by imbibing zombie blood or microdosing it, you can actually get like a little bit of a high, and you can also move between zombies without being eaten. So that story is going to be premiered in the book for the first time, but it's going to give hints also to what is going on in Morganton County even a century later. So
that's exciting.
Thank you.
Wait, when is that coming out?
I don't know, because like I'm pitching and querying, and that process is
cool. Okay. A nightmare.
Yes.
A nightmare.
a lot scarier than the stuff I'm writing.
Nothing is scarier than actually pitching your own work to people and just waiting for them to respond.
Oh yeah, and then some if they do respond, because a lot of them say don't expect a response. I'm like,
yep. Well, at least they tell you that. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Sadly, it's like we're just probably not going to get back to you. But regardless, that is extremely exciting.
That is incredibly exciting.
Thank you.
Now, you also... Whoa. I didn't mean to do that. You also... And this is... Okay, so you mentioned earlier that you like being silly.
Oh, yes.
And let me tell you that one of the best things is following you on TikTok.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You had just, like, I think a few days ago posted the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one, and I was fucking rolling. And I'd love to see that you're spreading out and doing this kind of TikTok stuff, because you are a hilarious man, I have to say.
Thank you. Please tell my partner, because he's tired of my jokes. So let him know this. But I don't know. The funny thing about it is, like, that's who I am. I'm just very silly. So I'm happy that I was nervous starting the TikTok, because Brother Ghoulish's Tomb is, like, in the beginning, a very different vibe. And I was like, are people just not going to take me serious as a writer or as a content creator after I do this? And I'm like, you know what? If they're like that, I got to be me. I got to have fun. Like, I love this genre in many different ways. So this is how I show my love. I'm making fun of things.
I love it. I love it.
It's
so
incredible.
we'll absolutely gonna put your TikTok information also in the show notes when we do this, because people need to be following you, because it brings every time it pops up on my For You page or something, it's like it brings a smile to my face. So I just had to say that I really enjoy that.
Thank you.
Does your partner, like, ever just walk in while you're filming and is like, what in the shit? Because that happens to me with my partner when I film for Dread Central's TikTok. He's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, no one, just my phone.
He does. He walks in all the time. And I feel bashful doing some of them in front of him, because y'all see the type of stuff I be doing on there. Like the one where I was twerking as Ghostface and I had the wig like around the mask. I waited until he was like gone before I did that. I did not want him to see, like, and I show him after, like, but when he walks in, I stop. Like, he was there for the one where I was doing the Omarion challenge for the Cenobites. He was there for that one. And funny fact about that TikTok, that one took over an hour to do. It was very difficult, because it was the only one that I was recording from behind, so I couldn't see what I was doing.
Right.
And so I kept doing it. He was like, I was sweating and everything. He was like, babe, like, take a break. And I'm like, no, must dance for Pinhead and the Cenobites. And then, you know what happened.
Must do it for Pinhead.
Okay, so before we talk about the movie, I also want to talk about Blerdy Massacre. How did this come about? What are you guys doing on the podcast? Give us all the deets.
So Blerdy Massacre is a project I'm super excited about, because it's definitely, so for everyone listening, it's myself, Sheree Bohannon from Nightmare Fierce, and Zero Gravity from IDK Gravity. And so those two people are people I love and adore, and we've worked together a lot, but we've also developed a camaraderie and a friendship that, you know, we talk to each other regularly, and I love and respect them. And so for them to come to me with this idea, I was like, y'all want to work with moi? Like, okay, let's do it. And it just rolled, and it was natural. And I'm excited to look at things from that perspective, you know, focusing on Black filmmakers and Black directors and just all of blurred culture, essentially. And if anyone's listening, doesn't like, that's a new term for you, it's a Black nerd. So it's going to go into horror, but also sci-fi, and it's going to go into other genre works that I feel are grossly underlooked at right now. So I'm excited.
The first episode launched and it's doing great, it sounds like. What do you have? What's some upcoming episodes people can look forward to?
I can't say yet.
Can't say, okay.
I'll tell y'all this. We have a lot planned. We have a huge list of stuff to get into.
Hell yeah.
And I think y'all should watch. I can't spoil it. I'm sorry.
We'll put links to everything for the podcast, for both podcasts in the show notes, everybody. So make sure to follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. You will not be disappointed. Thank you. Okay, but Ryan, what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
Tales from the Hood, of course.
Of course. Okay, so for those of you unfamiliar, Tales of the Hood is all about a funeral director who tells 4 strange tales of horror with a black focus on 3 drug dealers he traps in his place of business.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's very, very, very brisk summary from IMDb
Very
for that
summary.
one. Okay,
Yeah.
So I want to know, how old were you when you saw this? How did you see this? Why is this your Scarred for Life moment? Give us your horror story.
I saw this for the first time when I was maybe 6. Because it was like, it was just coming to VHS. I'm just going to age myself with that technology. Some listeners may, VHS, what the hell is that? It's like a big ass DVD.
That you have to manually rewind.
Y'all get everything instantly
Be kind,
nowadays.
rewind.
So I was 6, at the most 7. And like I said, I was not allowed to be watching this film. But my older brother owned it, and he was like, "Oh, you want to watch it? Let's watch it." And so he showed it to me, and because I wanted it so bad. And I was living in Landover, Maryland at the time. And one of the things I have always found about Maryland frightening is that I associate Maryland with the Blair Witch Project, which was another film I had seen around this time. And my family was very like esoteric, like they believed in like spirits and ghosts and witches. And so it was always like a reality that the Blair Witch would come and get me. And like looking at Tales from the Hood, it was like, I really thought these dolls would come and get me. I thought that, I wasn't so much worried about like the zombie or anything, cause like I didn't do nothing to him. But those dolls, like they frightened me. And I didn't even finish watching Tales from the Hood the first time I tried to watch it. I didn't finish it. So, I tapped out at the doll story. It was too frightening. And I had nightmares for like years. And it was so bad. Like even the strike of the violin, like it was an instant shutdown. I couldn't deal with it. It would take years for me to actually go back. I mean, actually decades now I think about it and like appreciate it for the gem that it is. It was too frightening. Yeah.
So nightmares for years. What do you remember kind of like what any of those nightmares were about? Were they just the dolls coming at you, or?
I don't remember them specifically, but I know that they all had something to do with that doll. But not all the dolls specifically, that one. The main doll. He was so
like hangs to like the chandelier and it's like running around chasing him around.
He's frightening.
Yeah.
He is frightening. And like I feel like watching this now for like a 1995 movie was actually relatively impressed with how they had that like the doll running around after him.
Me too.
Like, I was impressed with that.
Well, the
not all
doll
the effects held up very well, but
Not
all of them. But the dolls were done by the Chiodo Brothers production. They weren't done by the Chiodo Brothers, but they were by their production studio. And in fact, I guess a little tidbit that I found is that actually one of those dolls ended up in Team America World Police.
No shit, are you serious?
Which was also done by the Chiodo Brothers Productions. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a little tidbit there. But yeah, no,
interesting
that's
crossover there.
you watch them and it's like this is what that production studio was so good at doing, was that kind of puppetry work, because it holds up to today, and it's still the most frightening part of that movie for me.
Yeah, for me
Even
too.
though it's happening to an absolutely atrocious human being, it's still a pretty terrifying moment.
Yeah, it still is frightening. And now I can, because like watching it with my older brother, he was born in 79, I was born in 90, just to show you like our age difference.
Okay.
He found pieces of that movie very funny, like hilarious. Like he would rewind certain parts and like redo them over and over and over again.
Really?
And I didn't find anything in that movie funny. Like when I was younger, it wasn't funny to me. But now that I've seen it so many times, I can also go back and like rewind certain parts and kind of laugh at certain pieces of it. But it's not laughing because it's actually funny. It's just that the caricatures of like the people they represent is so turned up on 10 that you cannot help but laugh at how just absolutely awful these people are. And then knowing they're going to get the comeuppance each time adds to it as well, of course.
Yeah, okay. So I never, okay. When this movie came out in 1995, I've mentioned this on the podcast many times. I was out of horror movies at that time. I was not watching horror movies. I was like reading books, and my parents had like gotten very conservative with me watching horror movies. So I had retreated to books, and then I was also in like after school activities, band, and all that kind of stuff. So I had no idea that this movie even existed.
Wow.
Until like, I don't know, maybe the early 2000s. And then at that point, I honestly thought it was a comedy, or it was like a parody of like Tales from the Crypt. And so I stayed away from it. I never watched it. And I didn't watch it until like a couple years ago and was like, whoa, this movie is not at all what I was expecting it to be. And I wonder, I know that I had found an interview with the director, Rusty Cundiff? Cundiff. I found an interview with him that he did with IndieWire, and they were talking about how a lot of people refer to it as a horror comedy, and he says that he'd never considered it a horror comedy. He's like, you look at something like Scream, and that's a horror comedy. He says, I feel personally that Tales from the Hood is different. He's like, there are certain moments that produce laughter, but taking it in totality, there are less laughs. And he's like, where was that? I don't think there are really any laughters in the episode Boys Don't Cry with David Alan Grier and Paula J. Parker, and he's like, the Corbin Bernstein episode and certainly the Crazy K section have absolutely nothing funny in them. And he's like, it's interesting that it got that label. And I do think that, I do wonder if a lot of people didn't go see it because they thought it was just like a parody or a horror comedy, which wasn't really a thing at that time when it came out.
I wonder too. I mean, I feel like when I first watched it, I knew there was some type of association with Tales from the Crypt. Like, I knew that there was some type of association, but I hadn't seen going through like the whole catalog, right? I hadn't seen Bordello of Blood until much later. I hadn't seen Demon Knight until much later. The only one I had seen was this, and it was like a loose one because like with these other films, you actually get like the Crypt Keeper coming on, and there's like a sandwich story on the outsides. But I don't know. I always, and this was just, I don't know this for a fact, obviously. I always thought it was just the estranged stepchild because it was like a black piece of horror, you know, history. And so it didn't get as much like shine or promotion because of that. And I think when like film studios like put comedy on things, it's a strategic move sometimes. Like sometimes they do it because they think they can earn a different rating, or they can because I feel like Scream did something similar, but I can't remember the specifics of it, like playing with the genre label so they can get like a different rating or something. But I don't know if that was the case with this, but I can see that. I can see some people being turned off from the idea of like, first of all, it's called Tales from the Hood, so it puts you in mind of like a lot of those horror movies that are like from the hood or whatever, like Leprechaun the Hood and stuff. So people tend to not really want to watch those because they're not usually really good films. They're usually like really offensive to black people, or they may be tone deaf, like blaxploitation films that were written more by white people, the way that they think black people act. So it could have easily been overlooked. Because, like, Tales from the Hood is one of those, like, rare instances where you go back and you're like, and you know it has black filmmakers, and you see what it's talking about. And a lot of these topics still are really relevant today. And it's just wild to even think about, you know?
That was my reaction to seeing it for the first time a couple years ago was this is an incredible piece of filmmaking that it's a shame that it's not talked about enough, and two, it also made me really sad to see how far we have not come since 1995. Like the story is just so much resonance,
like especially the first story about police brutality against black men, and about police corruption. It's like this literally has been an issue forever. and will continue to be an issue. And it's terrifying because, so this was the first time I actually watched this movie. This has been on my watch list for a while. I know, I didn't watch it. I'm so sorry, everybody. I was very wrong. But after especially hearing Jazz from Girl That's Scary wrote an incredible article about it.
Yes.
And I wanted to see it, but after reading that, I was like, Jesus Christ, I have slept on this movie for too long. I need to watch it. And I'm so glad you brought it, because we all talk about anthology films all the time and how much we love Creepshow, but this movie really does deserve to be in the pantheon of incredibly made anthology films that are both terrifying and important and well made and just really well thought through. Because I was scared watching this. I was the effects are incredible. The storytelling is socially relevant, but also scary. And I just feel like it's such an important horror movie for those reasons. You talk about Creepshow, then talk about Tales from the Hood. And I'm embarrassed that I never saw it, only because I think it was very much with my white upbringing, with my parents, especially my dad being Creepshow is the best anthology movie. You don't need to see any other ones. There's no other good anthology horror movie. So I will take ownership of that. But it is so good. And Clarence Williams III as our horror host, y'all, it is the I don't know. I didn't know what I expected. You see just a couple of the photos of him grinning with his devilish grin, but he is so good in this movie. His voice is so creepy and measured and quiet and careful, and he's dressed in this outlandish suit, but he's still, there's something about him that is just very off-putting. And he's an incredible horror villain in this movie. The way he talks.
He is. He's one of my biggest inspirations, to be honest, as a host. I love that depiction. And it requires so much energy and patience and talent and skill. If I could ever get close to that level, that would be amazing. I love his performance quality in this piece. And it adds to the scares because he's not acting like someone who you can trust per se, right? But you would probably write him off going into Sim's funeral home is more is a kooky person versus someone who's about to unveil what he did.
Yeah, because the three guys are you're a fucking weird old dude. You have nothing. Is you can't do anything to us. We have guns and we're younger. You're no threat to us. And he's oh, of course I'm not a threat to you. No, I'm just a kooky old man who runs a funeral home. Oh no, with my walking stick. And he's just gotcha.
I like the way you both are talking about his dialogue, though, because one of the things I picked up on this last watch was the way he thinks about words. I love when the drug dealers are we're here for the shit. And he's the shit. And the way he just sort of thinks about that word and then just keeps bringing it up as if it amuses him so much that they don't realize that they are actually knee deep in literal shit, or I guess figurative shit. They're not literally walking through shit, but
shit everywhere. It's just shit covered
everywhere.
The camera never did pan down, so
that's a good point. That's an excellent point. But I love the way he considers those words when he's saying them, because first of all, it is, I mean, it's revealed eventually, that he is, a demon or the devil or what have you from hell. But it's almost as if he's hearing these words for the first time and he's just relishing the different kind of play on words that everyone is using. And it's such a good performance.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to work through the different sections just because it's easily laid out for us. So the first one, what's the first one called?
Revelation.
Rogue Cop Revelation.
Yes, and so I mentioned that it's about bunch of bad white cops who beat up a man who's a politician speaking out against corruption, and there's one black police officer who tries to stop them, and they trick them, and they actually end up killing the politician. And politician comes back as a zombie a year later to get revenge on these guys. Yeah. And this is the one that you see a lot of images from, of the guy with the bright blue eyes and kind of the zombie effects on his head, just staring kind of at the camera. I feel that's one of the big iconic images from this movie is from this one. This one is obviously incredibly difficult to watch because most of the horror is you're seeing something that happens to a lot of black men and getting brutalized by white cops. But then the table gets turned on them. And my favorite part is when he gets the fucking needles and likes to levitate and then hits him with all of the hypodermic needles on the ground. Wow. Mwah. Chef's kiss.
It's so good.
And then nails him to a cross.
Yeah.
Or needles him to a cross.
I am curious. Because I know that the dolls one is what stuck in your mind, but did this ever bother you at all when you were a kid watching it?
So I'm happy you asked that, because like rewatching it this time, this was the one that I had a lot more to say than I would have as a kid. Because as a kid, like I wasn't as triggered by this particular topic as I am now as a grown man who, you know, has been accosted by the police when I'm not doing shit, and, you know, dealing with the racial tensions that are just in America. And one of my greatest fears that like something happens and then they just say, oh, well, you know, he did something wrong, so he deserved to be gone, or whatever the case may be. So now this is the scariest story to me just because of that. But the reality is when I was younger, it didn't trigger me as much. And I think the pieces of it that scared me the most as a kid, though, because there were pieces in this that also, you know, were pretty frightening. Not as much as the doll story, but damn near close, was definitely the needle going down the throat. That thing scared me. The vision, like the sight of seeing Martin Morehouse as like a zombie, like it actually was very frightening. Him pulling like the head up through the car and cutting his head, like that was frightening. Even his voice, I don't know if you noticed, but there's like an odd like effect to his voice in that last scene where he's like, "Where were you when I needed you, brother?" Like that effect. Oh man, chills, like ice cold.
I could see that, and I think because I was trying to picture myself if I were a kid and I saw this. This one definitely has a lot more of the actiony moments and has like, you know, the zombie looks I think he looks kind of cool, and then you have like the car chases and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely the more action packed of them, and so like I feel like that. If you're not like clued in onto what it's actually exploring, that I could see it that this would probably go over most kids' heads.
Yeah, I would. That's a great point. I think for all the stories, that's what it shares in common for me. As a kid, I think only boys do get bruised was probably the only one that I caught it when I was a kid. But as I got older, the other stories started to make more sense to me. And this is a great example of that. Like, to be clear, I didn't even, as a kid, realize that the man who's getting killed, so not getting killed, why did I say that? The guy who ends up in the insane asylum at the end, I didn't put it together that was the same person who was the cop at the beginning when I was a kid. Because I was too busy just being scared, and I didn't associate the characters, and I didn't understand the storyline. But as an adult, I'm like, damn, like this is a really tight story because this guy represents a real person, you know? And a lot of the other characters later in the film are very similar to this. They all represent different dynamics. And I think that's what's really cool about films like this that show different types of black people, where it's not just like a token or one kind of person. It does a great job of showing like a variety of, you know, people.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that watching this because, like, typically, I mean, from my perspective as a queer man, when there's always usually just typically one in a movie, and they always play one specific part, and so you see that, and you only see that kind of character represented throughout the history of movies, and so like it's interesting that you say that about like how there's different representations of black men, black women throughout this entire anthology, and so it's not just like you said tokenism. I like that. That's interesting. You know, this also has like my favorite. Favorite loose, but like a perfect piece of filmmaking is the use of "Strange Fruit" by Billie Holiday. There's that whole sequence. Like it's this moment where like it's like this is doing something more than just being like a horror movie. There's some really good filmmaking going on in this segment, I think. watching it last night, where it's like I don't know why I didn't realize this when I saw this the first time, but the way that it plays out, where poor Clarence ends up in an asylum, and the orderlies are all of a sudden just assuming he's a cop killer because the ghost is gone, the zombie is gone. And so the way that it sort of like kind of continues that cycle of people just like blaming it all on the poor black man is like, it's such a smart way to end this episode that I completely didn't even realize until I was watching it last night, as I'm like taking, copious notes and trying to like get all my thoughts together. It's like, wow, it's such a tight little story to start this all off on.
I agree. It is. It's scary, and it gets the obvious one, I think, out the way so that we can get into other dynamics, in the other stories, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, they got the very pointed, they're all very pointed and all like taking a very like staunch political stance. But this one, like you said, is a little bit more obvious in terms of like grabbing your attention, but also being like, okay, cool. So now that the one that you probably thought was going to happen has happened, let's give you more stories, because this isn't the only experience, like the only black experience and the only way that we can write horror for black characters and for like a black cast of characters, which great. But also thinking about this, because this was 1995, I wonder, and I haven't done a lot of research into this, but like reception from like predominantly white audiences, I feel like was probably not great because people get mad about political / like black horror movies now. Like I can only imagine in 1995 with Tales from the Hood that is so not aggressively, so like unabashedly itself in terms of what it's about, and being like, hello, this is a black horror movie about black situations and black problems in America, and we're going to make you watch it. And people were probably like, I don't want to deal with that today. Which unfortunately I feel like could have been the case. Just knowing kind of like horror audiences in the 1995, and just thinking about how that unfortunately probably had a lot to do with the reception, and how like it was very much not trying to mask anything with what it was doing.
Well, it also only came out like a few years after the Rodney King beating. Like that's that's the kind of climate that this is being birthed in, and
yeah.
But now we're covering it. Now everyone has to watch it. But so then the next story is
boys do get bruised.
Boys do get bruised. Which
another heartbreaking one.
Totally forgot. Another heartbreaking one about a young boy who was covered in bruises, and they're like, he said it's a monster, and his teacher is like, something is wrong at home, and finds out that there is in fact something wrong at home. So this does a lot with like domestic abuse of young children, and a teacher being a good teacher / putting their fucking life on the line for their kids, like almost like all teachers do all the fucking time.
Played by the director.
You know what? I used to say he was a good teacher too, but on this recent rewatch, his card got revoked, and I'm explaining to you why. Because I was with him to a point. Everything was fine. Going to the house to address the issue. Okay, good. Even later, after the part I'm about to complain about, him coming back to try to like defend them. Okay, but that piece where he's interacting with the monster and he is not putting it together that this has based on process of elimination. There can only be one motherfucker in here who is the monster, and he's just sitting at the table just, Walter's been, no, like he's saying there's a
there's a monster. Oh really? It's like, buddy,
if they would have panned the camera out, you would have seen me in the corner like Courage the Cowardly Dog. I literally pointing at, because it's like the writing is on the wall, like this is the monster, and I'm like, you know what, you lose your card. You should have been like, okay, well, cell phones weren't around, so I was about to say they were, but I don't know if he was likely to have one.
Probably
I don't
not.
know. The thing is this: he needed to alert the authorities at that point.
Yeah, I completely actually agree with that, because when I was watching it, the first time I watched it, I definitely had that same feeling. And when I was watching it last night, I was like, okay, you got to know that that is the monster. You also got to know that the woman is looking at him with fear. The kid is looking at him with fear. And you are just going to exercise yourself from the situation after you have just basically said, yeah, your kid is drawing pictures of you, is basically what he's saying. And I'm going to leave.
And then follows it up with time to hit the old dusty trail, sir.
I'm out. Have a great night, everybody.
I just dropped this bomb in your house. I'm going to leave now, and you guys can deal with the consequences. Bye. It's like...
You know what? Like, rewatching it rewatching it this time, it made me realize, like, there's two levels of horror here. Because, like, the obvious one is, like, the horrors of racism. But the other one is the horrors of the male ego.
Mm-hmm. Yes, dissect that, please.
I'm just saying, and this is a great example of it. So, I don't know. He needed to know. He needed to be a little bit stronger in his, whatever he was doing and put his ego aside.
Yeah. Well, it's true, because all of these stories are about black male characters. Like, there are some black women, but it's a lot of black. Oh, I didn't even think about that with, like, male ego and how that factors in.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's a lot of ego. Even with, like, Duke Metger or whatever. Like, if you think about it, right? He actually starts seeing something supernatural happening inside the house. And I know we're not at that story yet, but just to give, like, a taste of what I'm talking about. And he has such an ego. He's not leaving the house. He's beating these dolls with the flag. He's shooting them. I'm like, leave. You can live. You can live. He ran the footage back. Well, goddamn, that's a doll tripping up Rhodey. And he stayed. Like,
well, would you look at that?
Now, would you look at the goodness gracious, great. And I'm like, okay, sir, like, you want to die. Because you can't, how you going to kill, they said it in the movie. How can you kill what's already dead? These dolls is dead as fuck. And you about to join them. You about to be up in the painting, playing around. The male ego is something wicked, man. It is something really, really wicked.
Yeah, absolutely. but this scene, oh my God, my mind, I'm still stuck on this man and the flag. I have so many thoughts about that. But okay, the way that this segment ends with the kid twisting the monster thing, it's really kind of a fun,
coolest fucking death I've seen.
Yes.
Like, what an incredible death. And, like, sorry, Terry, I just was so excited about that death.
Please go on, because that's what I wanted to talk about. It's such a great visual motif, and it's such a well done arm breaking, leg breaking, body twisting. Like, it's a great moment of body horror that I just.
Well, and I love this. It's like it's very much hitting those horror movie beats of the kid says something and no one believes him, because this kind of warps out a little bit. Like, they do believe him sort of that something is wrong, but it's not a monster. And he's like, no, if I draw it and I can kill it. They're like, that's not how you deal with monsters. And he's like, actually, yeah, it fucking is, because none of you are going to do anything about it. So I'm going to take my drawing and break his arm and crumple him up and step on him. And guess what? I did it. And it's very much like that kind of kids horror movie thing. And I love that, and that it kind of plays with those expectations and tropes of, like, the monster in the closet. No one believes the kid, and the kid gets his revenge because he knows the truth and he knows the secret to hurting the monster. And it plays with that in a really interesting way, I think. Like, playing with the reality of, like, kids using horror and fantasy to kind of cover up atrocities going on in their lives and trauma, but then also having that magic being the way that the kid can ultimately defeat the bad guy.
Because I love that you said that. Because especially as, like, a lot of horror fans, like we were growing up, a lot of us also were creatives. So we think about how, like, we're in situations where, because imagination is, like, the foundation of creativity, that's your ticket out of this, like, your imagination, your creativity. And I feel like it's important for young black boys to see that, especially, like, watching it, because, like, you know, and I'm pretty sure other groups as well, but I am not a white person, so I don't know, but you know, I'm just saying, like, that your imagination's okay. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you because you're not trying to be stoic, or you're not trying to be like emotionless because that's what society expects you to be. You can be colorful and paint and stuff, and it's your ticket out of that. And I thought that was really dope. And there was something else I wanted to say about that scene. It was something else. It was really good too. It'll come back if it's meant to be.
I will also say the saddest shit in that section is when it's the close up on the little boy's face with the tears running down his face as the monster's hand comes around the door, and you're like,
"Won't someone help this poor kid?"
It's so sad.
Want to hug you because I feel like what this movie does so well is take those tropes but make them even more horrifying. Like, again, we've seen this before with the kids seeing the scary thing under the bed or in the closet, or like something calling their name and they hide under the bed and it's scary, but here they really linger on his face and the tears and the actual like recurring fear from this kid. Like, this isn't just a ghosty. This is something really really bad hurting him, and you get this implication that like, one, it's happening all the time, and there's a sexual violence aspect to it because the door is locked and he's trying to get through the door and the kid is terrified, and it's just like plays into that in a way that is so heartbreaking. And it's just again, I keep saying impressive, but just how they're melding all of these genre things together to create these stories that are both expected and not is just like, and again, lending it to talking about like creativity in young boys and in young Black boys. Like, hey, guess what? Your creativity actually can help you and is a good thing. Like, don't let that be squashed ever. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's intrinsically connected to your childhood. And I know y'all heard the saying, like, childhood is the kingdom where nobody ever dies. It's important. Yeah. Like, and I remember what I was going to say. Another reason he lost his damn card. Because he was acting like he didn't believe him a little bit. And I definitely would have been like, if I was that little boy, like, okay, well, something is beating my ass. So are we just going to act like we don't see what is happening? Like, and that's the problem. A lot of adults, like, that are in power positions, they act like that. Like, they invalidate youth and they don't believe them. That's why it is powerful for him to say, like, he said that no one would believe me. That rings true to victims of abuse. And it was just for that story to be so short, it just pulled that thing together. It was very tight and it was very true to what people deal with, essentially, even though they turned it into a horror imagining.
Yeah. And that's this whole fucking movie is like really tight stories that get to the core of so many like emotional things so quickly. And like, obviously, and that is intrinsic to the anthology movie, but like this one in particular, I feel like packs so much in each of its sections in such a way that is so impressive how quickly they're able to write all of these characters and emotional beats into something and get you really invested in everything that's going on screen too. Like, that is not an easy feat with shorts. Oh yeah. And it's just like, consistently with all four of these shorts are just like, holy shit, like the writing is just incredible that you're able to do that.
I also just want to give a quick shout out to David Alan Grier in his performance, his very restrained and terrifying performance. Because at the time he was known mostly for comedy stuff, like in Living Color and Blank Man and a bunch of like that kind of more silly type things. And his performance in here is the opposite of that. I mean, he does get a little campy once he's being torn apart and twisted, like some of his lines.
What does he say on the floor? Like, this isn't over, motherfuckers, or something like that?
Over yet, bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, bitch.
I was like, it is.
It sure is.
Buddy,
sure
you are tied. Like, you are tied into a knot on the floor. I think it's over.
Right. This man was a whole ass pretzel, still talking shit. The male ego.
The male ego talking shit, even when you are literally twisted into a human pretzel. Well, I'm the best. So they introduce each of these stories with them opening a coffin and like the guy, the three drug dealers looking into coffins, and Mr. Sims is like, oh, let me explain it to you. They open this one and you don't see it. Like, what in the fuck happened to this guy? And then you get to the end and you're like, ooh, yeah.
Burn body.
Okay, that is exactly what was inside of that coffin. Ooh.
Yeah.
I would have run out after that point. If someone opened a coffin and showed that to me, be like, you know what? You can have the shit. I'm out. Like, goodbye. I don't know what weird things you're dealing in, but I don't want to be a part of it.
That's a thing, like, but like people, like, I don't know what it was, but people just opening up coffins and showing me bodies, just generally speaking, is not cocktail hour etiquette.
Let me tell you some stories about the dead bodies I have and just open them up like...
I'm like, sir, where are my drugs?
Buddy.
Where's my shit?
I'm getting married. I'm getting married this year, so I'm gonna have at the cocktail hour just have coffins and open things up and just have coffins opening up with like food or maybe actual dead bodies to really keep everyone
There you go. Keep them on their toes.
I'm letting you know right now. First of all, everything, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
But also, I would not be eating out no damn coffins.
Me neither. Oh no, absolutely not. I'd have my own stash like hidden back somewhere, so I wouldn't have to eat anything out of the coffin.
That would scare the hell out of me. And the funny thing is, since it's like, I would be like looking like I'm eating, like, oh girl, yes, because I don't want, it's your, your big day.
Oh yes, throw it in the trash.
And then like when you walk away, just like. I would tell you later, because, when it's funny, it's not going to be funny on the day of. You don't cuss me out. And we have to have a magical evening.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. Everyone's like, why are there coffins? What's wrong with her? Is she okay? Like,
oh, no, they can't talk shit about you, though. Like, if you're my friend, I'll talk to you about it, but I'm not going to be in the Kiki corner talking about your event. That's trash. Because if they try it, even if I agree, I'm like, what y'all won't do is talk about my girl, okay? Because what y'all wedding look like? Where'd y'all get married at?
That's a friend.
with her weird coffin serving platters.
And then later be like, girl, we got to talk about these coffins.
Okay, big girl.
Hey, are you okay? Like, what is happening here? Why'd you do that? You're weird, but that was too weird. That was weird for you.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
anyway.
Wow, that was a journey.
But then, so the third story is the KK Comeuppance, which is the doll story that we have talked about at the beginning, which is the one that terrified you as a child. And it's scary, and it's really fucking scary.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I was tearing up a little bit remembering the pain.
The pain. Yeah. I feel like the title kind of just like tells you all you need to know. KK Comeuppance. This guy, I just lost the entire synopsis.
Duke Medgar.
The most southern white man name I've ever heard in my life. Duke Medgar.
Well, it's actually a combination of two notorious real white supremacists, David Duke and then the Aryan Resistance founder, Tom Metzger. It's like where they put those two together. And so, yes, it is the most white supremacist sounding name ever. So the thing that was stuck in my head and was like causing me is the fact that we have this very potent image of this man using the American flag to beat away these dolls, hit the black woman mural, and also at the very end to try to hide himself behind it while the dolls are coming to kill him. And it's such a potent image.
Mm-hmm. And I'm ashamed to admit that as much as I've seen this movie, I didn't put together the flag thing until this recent rewatch, because Emilio was watching it with me. And when he's actually like beating the dolls with the flag, he was like, wow, that is a really like powerful message. Like, and I was like, wow, I didn't even put it together, because like, as terrible as this man is, he's one of the examples of someone that I just laugh at. Like, he's so awful. He's such a piece of shit. And it's like, knowing that he's going to get that comeuppance, watching this each time, I'm laughing at how awful this dude is. And then seeing him get it, it's like, oh, it's such a payoff. It's just... And then I can't stand the dude playing Rhodey, like his black counterpart, because he's literally along with it, making fun of his own people and shit. And I'm just like, the shucking and jiving and all the foolishness, it's just, everyone got their comeuppance. And the dolls are still frightening, but I like them a little more than the actual humans in this one. Yeah. Even with them like eating him at the end.
Gnarly. That moment, even still, like when I was watching, it's like, wow, this is really going for it. This is some gnarly. This is like the set piece for this movie, and it well earned. But it still made me like going,
supremacists.
There you go.
Do it all the time. It's real. Eat them.
Oh my God, that's my phone background. Did you? I made it on Canva.
I made it on Canva.
I'm just saying, look, free stuff. But no, you're right though. Like, I mean, it is like I feel like when people talk or think about the first Tales from the Hood, this is the quintessential one. Like, this is the story. I mean, this and Boys Do Get Bruised. I feel like those are the two popular ones. Not just in terms of images though, because I feel like people do show images of like all of the stories and stuff, like you were talking about early, like with I can't think his name, Martin Morehouse, like as the zombie. Yeah. Like, he shows up on our timeline quite a bit too because of just how awesome that looked. Yeah, this is the one. Them damn scary ass dolls.
They're so good. It's so well puppeted and so well animated and just so good.
I also love a good like flashing to a painting on the wall and it's empty. The shape is empty, and that means something is out of like something has popped out of the wall, and it keeps flashing back, and then it's all just like empty little slots where where the dolls have come out, and it's like, yes, they're here. But also him shooting at. Putting the doll on dartboard and just yelling just a slew of horrendous racial remarks and shooting it with a gun. It's just like, yeah, I fucking guess, dude. Like, was that when he's yelling no reparations at one point? He's like yelling this at the dolls, and it's just like, buddy. But again, like, kudos to the writers of just being like, no, we're gonna really like really show you how bad he is. Like, this isn't gonna be some like, oh, we're just gonna like thinly veil it. Like, oh no, he's just gonna be yelling the worst things you could possibly imagine at a fucking doll.
At a doll.
Yeah.
That tripped up your homeboy. It's just
when he zooms in on the TV, he's like, wait, the doll was there. I love that. He's like, it's always the doll.
I feel like that was the point of my childhood life where I first said nope. I feel like that was when he ran the footage back and that doll was down there with his foot. I was, nope, I'm okay with this movie. Let me just go ahead and watch Caillou or some shit. Was Caillou even on back then? Maybe Arthur. That's it. That feels more appropriate.
I don't know if Caillou, probably Arthur. Caillou.
But you said earlier when you were talking, you're remembering this as a kid and the violin cue. Okay, we have to give a shout out to Christopher Young, the composer for this. He turned out like the moment the theme kind of starts and it's that kind of violin sound that is repeated throughout. Such a fantastic sound. And Christopher Young is a fantastic composer that has a long lineage in horror history. He did Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, which
I'm about to say okay. Even Atlas Shrugged.
A lesser one maybe, but he also did the music for Hellraiser.
Okay, well, I'm liking him a little more.
He did music for in the 2000s so much. The Gift, Bless the Child, Wonder Boys. He did Runaway Jury. He did The Exorcism of Emily Rose. He did The Grudge 2, Spider-Man 3. He did The Uninvited, Drag Me to Hell, Sinister. Like,
wow,
serving out the horror scores.
He got money. Let me stop now. But let me tell you something. That is an impressive resume, and some of those sound scores I actually remember. So he's the man.
Wow.
And he turns out a great score in this. I love that theme. I'm a huge music nerd, and the moment. It just sets you right in that mood, the opening to this movie. And then to hear that refrain come up in this episode in particular, it's just like, I was so glad that you mentioned that was like that use of memory you remember from being a kid, because it's such an effective moment.
It actually used to strike me like right at my heart. Like the violin, like that sharp, like it's instantly memorable. It was frightening, and it heralds the movie. Like, I could be anywhere. If I hear that, I'm automatically transported to Tales from the Hood, like that.
And then the last segment,
weird one,
Hardcore Convert, which someone described as like Clockwork Orangey, which is pretty accurate because it's a man who is shot in a gang-related incident, and he survives. They put him in jail forever without parole, and he is used to be an experiment on like rehabilitating criminals in a very fascinating way.
That he gets transferred to basically the house on the hill. Like, it is totally years before the house on the hill would like have that giant, asylum up on the hill with women in dominatrix leather.
Fuck yeah. When he walks in and they just walk by in the black leather and it looks like a fucking Hellraiser hostel situation, like bright red walls. I'm like, where are we? I love it.
Me too.
And then he's in bikini briefs and nothing else for the rest of the short.
Oh yeah. And they very obviously show them like screwing down his body right on top of his penis. And his right, like
the sexual imagery in this one.
I'm trying to be like, I'm trying to keep it together, but
it's hot.
Well, but, like, he's very sexualized in this, though.
He is.
But like he is, I was like, this is very interesting. Of like the basically naked black male body laid out like a Frankenstein's monster on the slab, very like medicalized, and there's all these women around him in like these flowing outfits or dominatrix outfits, and it's very striking.
They put a ball gag in his mouth.
Oh yeah,
yeah, they sure do, and they just pump it with liquid.
It's like my fan stopped working. It's getting kind of
sweating.
Something is going on.
I'm glad I'm not alone. I was watching this last night and I was like,
I feel bad thinking this guy's hot because like, this is not like an attractive moment, but there's something weirdly kinky. Like, it's like a kinky vibe to this whole thing.
I don't feel bad for it. Like, they literally laid this man down and like in those damn bikini briefs and strapped him down on a bouncing table, and like he's just soaked, drenched. And I'm just like, I can't take this. This is too much. Like, this is way too much.
I'm not scared.
Did we switch to a porno? Like, what is going on here?
I'm like, am I supposed to be frightened? Is this horror? Like, what's that? Who let Clive Barker in on this? Because this is a hot ass scene. Like, he did this scene.
Very Clive Barker. And like, I want more about the woman doctor, who's like Lady Frankenstein flipping the switches and like screwing him down and putting the ball gag in his mouth. I'm like, you're cool. I want to know more about your story and you becoming a scientist and trying to make these experimenting on people. It's fascinating. But about that whole moment.
My partner had a theory about her that I never wondered. He was like, that I never thought of, rather. He was like, what if she's God? Like, what if she's supposed to be God? And like, this is like God trying to intervene and stop something from happening. And I was like, I'll say that you said that, but you're lucky I like you because I would steal that. I'd be like, you know what?
You should have stolen that. That's good.
But no,
that's really good.
It is. I was like, I could see that. Like, it feels like it's like his last opportunity, and I mean, blew it. Male ego. I mean, what can I say?
I'm obsessed with the thinking about God as a black woman with like a kink den.
Yes.
Like, I never thought I needed it, but I think that's like how I'm going to think about God now. If I ever think about God, is a black woman in a kink den.
This is the best day of my life. This is so good. Like, you don't understand. Like, they just gave me way too much life because same. Like, if I can see God, can it just be this? If
that's heaven, cool. Like, fuck yeah.
If that's
if God's gonna be like, hey, you fucked up, he'd be like, you know what? You're right. Tie me down and show me the light, man. Like, do it for me and for you. But I'm not enjoying it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely not for your enjoyment. It's for as much of the enjoyment as she wants to allow you to have, you know?
That only makes it hotter.
Right.
Yeah. But sans that incredible moment that I want more of now, I want it to be its own movie. Then he goes into the second phase where it's just like strobe lights and the people. Well, no, sorry, I skipped ahead. He is faced with a lot of very awful images of real life violence and against black people and gang violence, and it's just like very much like the barrage of disturbing images to show you the error of your ways of committing acts of violence against other black people. And then he goes into somewhere where there's flashing lights and all of the people he's killed start appearing and talking to him. And that's a fucking nightmare. And the strobe light really didn't help either. I was like, oh God, this is hell. Like, this is terrible.
The first time I watched Tales from the Hood, I actually didn't see this scene because I had stopped watching at the doll scene because it scared me too much. So it took me a while to see this one. And when I finally did see it, I was still a kid, but it was probably, if I remember correct, I've watched this movie so many times that like after that first time, I can't really remember, exactly time. But this is a really powerful scene for me for one reason specifically. Like growing up, my mom used to always tell me, right, if you kill someone, you'll see them again. Like she would always tell me this. Like she believed that like and she still believes this, but it doesn't come up in natural conversation because it's not exactly like cocktail hour etiquette. But she definitely
every time she sees, it just reminds you, Ryan, if you kill someone, you'll see them again. You're like, thanks? What? Why?
I'm like, I didn't kill anyone? Who told you something? Like, what? Stop talking to Emilio. He's pranking you.
I'm just imagining her leaving voice messages on your phone, just reminding you about that.
Oh my God. When she listens to this, my mom's a prankster. She would do that.
I love that.
She pranks me, and it's very cruel. But
amazing.
But she would always say that, like, you know, you don't get away with like killing people. Like, even if like you're found innocent by like a court of law, and even before you die and you have to face judgment, she would say you're going to see them. They come and visit you, and they haunt you, and they don't leave you alone. Like, they're always with you. And so that scene to me was always frightening because I didn't think anything supernatural was happening per se. I thought this is what happens if you kill someone, and I didn't know. I didn't have any bodies at the time, and so I had no reference point
at the time.
Oh, the tomb is filled with bodies, honey. No, it's not. No, but the thing. Oh, you know what? I'm dealing with you. I forgot what the hell I was about to say. Oh, okay,
Sorry.
No, ghosts. Yeah, ghosts bad. Male ego worse. That's where we were.
I think that pretty much sums up the movie, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
I think that's the log line. Ghost bad, male ego worse.
And, you know,
Perfect.
that's the spirit of it, man.
It is the spirit.
No,
Wow.
Back to this interview with Rusty. There was one moment where he was talking about how one of the things that happened with this movie, because he's talking about the sequels, which I want to briefly ask if you had seen, but before we get to that, he says that that happened with the first one is that I've had people who were once gang members come up to me and say they stopped being gang members because of Tales from the Hood, which is an awesome thing to have happened. The Crazy K segment made them rethink what they were doing.
I love that.
And I think that is it's such a interesting, the choices that are made to where this movie starts with the police brutality and then ends on this note is such a it feels so purposeful. But like,
oh yeah,
I loved reading that in that interview. It's like art can do things.
You know what? And when you think about like the first opening scene, like the credit scene, it's literally a memento mori, like decked in thug attire. So it's definitely like a "you two will die" moment to people who are living in the lane for the people who are meant to get this message. And like growing up, a lot of my cousins and my older brother, they were caught up in the gang life, like, you know, on the streets. And, you know, my brother was a Crip, and like we had spent many years dealing with a lot of stuff with that. I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's very
holy shit though.
It's
That's
very
fucking
real,
scary.
you know. And he's been shot multiple times. Like he's currently paralyzed because the last shooting actually destroyed his spine, like basically, so he can't walk. But he was living in the lane that this movie was trying to get people out of, and he just never got the message. And I think like sometimes people are just too far gone. But I'm happy to know that like a film like this could make that type of impact, because it was very purposeful in the way that it was trying to get to people. Because there are moments that are brilliant that you don't see anywhere else in media, like where Crazy K is in the cell next to the white supremacist, and he realizes, oh, we have a lot in common. We all right, you know. And that's literally something that I think people don't think about, like who are in that situation sometimes, that like what you're doing is actually what the enemy is doing, you know, like the people who are trying to hurt us. So why stay on that lane, you know? That made my day. I didn't know he said that. I mean, I'm not surprised though, because I feel like good art definitely, that's what it's for. Because like there are moments of this where honestly, I have a lot of fun watching this film, but there's also that piece of it that's so impactful, and it made this change. Like that's indicative of great art for me.
Hell yeah. Yeah, exactly. It can be, you love watching it, and also it can bring about some kind of change. Even if it's just for one person, there's a change that is being made, and that's incredible. Because they don't, like, with this segment especially, like, they do not shy away from violent images. Like, there are real historical images in this that are just, like, and with the white supremacists, too, like, that was also fucking intense. Like, showing his horrible tattoos and the way he's speaking, like, they really go in on that message.
Oh, yeah.
Like, very, very heavily. But...
Wow. But at least we got to see Crazy K in some bondage gear. You know, that was the...
We did. You know, exactly. You get these really, really intense moments, and then you see him in bondage gear, and then you go back to it. It's paced well. It's tonally great. It gets something for the whole family. I'm sorry. Oh. That's not...
It feels like they probably said that in the original commercial. How much you want to bet? Because they were pitching it as a comedy, so like, they probably threw that in there too. I can see it.
Yeah, it's from the hood. Something for the whole family. Oh my god. Wow.
Have you seen the sequels?
I have.
Are they good? I have not watched them. Okay.
The second one is not. The third one's marginally better, but I just kind of feel like it's that curse of making something so damn good that, you know, even if the other two were actually decent, I wouldn't probably be able to tell because that first one burned so bright. But from my perspective, they were not that good. I hope they still keep going though, because I feel like there's a chance for them to get better. It's just you have to keep doing it. Like there's a lot that our community is dealing with right now that can be spoken to, but you have to kind of like get in there. And then it also doesn't help that like a lot of the themes that were talked about in the first one are still relevant today. So it's like how many other ways can we come at it from different angles is like another perspective. But even looking at some of it, I was about to go on a tangent, but no, yes, I don't think they were that good.
Okay. Yeah, I was afraid of that.
I didn't realize they're from 2018 and 2020. Like, they really just all of a sudden in 2018 were like, oh yeah, okay, cool, we'll make a sequel to Tales from the Hood and then make another one. Interesting. With Keith David.
Yeah, he's playing the new...
He's Sims.
Yeah,
Sims,
but I don't know if it's supposed to be the same Sims because I couldn't pick up that. I feel like they addressed it, but I can't remember. Like, if it's supposed to be the same Mr. Sims or like his brother or some shit.
The reveal that Sims is the devil. I do love when he like turns the lights on with his fingers, the light bulbs. That was an incredible moment where he's like walking around and turning on the light bulbs and then reveals like you are in hell. And then the snake tongue comes from between his teeth,
which was clearly made. They inserted that with Canva. Clearly.
With Canva, clip art. So, clip art. Because, okay, so a lot of, like, this is in 1995, but some of the effects are great. Like the doll effects are great, the zombie effects are great, but then all of a sudden we go to hell and it looks like a clip art, like, Microsoft Paint situation, which makes me so sad because it's like the last shot and it's not very good, and it kind of makes me sad. I was like, oh no, that's the note you're gonna end on? Oh,
and then the boys are Harlem shaking in hell flame. It's not very good. I mean, the sound...
air, like, on fire. Oh, it's just... I know, I'm like, oh, this does not match anything that the previous 90 minutes. This is nothing like what I just watched.
I feel like if it were made, like, last year, the sound score at the end would be, this girl is on fire, fire. Because, like, it literally is like they're dancing. It looks like, I mean, a function I wouldn't mind going to, because they weren't burning up. The flames were just there. They were like
just hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were on fire but weren't on fire. You know what I mean?
They were on fire but they weren't smoking. Like it was a problem. It was an issue. And I need them to redo that scene. Remaster it for me real quick. Mm-hmm.
I know. That was a bummer because it's like, oh, you are in hell. You were dead the whole time because he shows them their coffins and like opens again with the fucking coffins, and it's like, look, you are actually dead, and they're like, what? And his eyes turn red.
Welcome to hell, motherfucker.
Which is an incredible line, though. I do love that line, but the imagery going on at the end, it was like, oh no, we used all of our budget. Fuck, what do we do?
The funny thing is the twist is like there. Like I love the twist. I feel like it's bomb.
Yes,
but,
it's a bomb. It's so good.
But that, like you said, those effects, and like you said, it was 95, and like they probably didn't open up their purse strings all the way for this feature already. So there was probably a piece, and a lot of the money probably went into the zombie for sure, and like the dolls. So they were like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and just Microsoft Paint, like you said.
I'll forgive it because the rest of the movie is amazing and the effects are great, but it was just such a funny, weird note to end on. Like, wait, this isn't... Okay, well, all right, that's fine, whatever. But like I said, Harlem shaking with the flames, like stock screaming. Not actually, because you hear like the stock screeching in the background, the Wilhelm scream. Just like, ah!
Yeah, it was a lot happening.
A lot.
It's a lot happening. Okay, do we want to wrap this up and give this our rating out of 5?
Sounds
since
good.
We've made it through. All right, Terry, how many Clarence Williams III's walking sticks out of 5 do you give Tales from the Hood?
You know, when I was looking at my letterbox, I'd given it a 4, but I'm telling you, after this conversation, I do think, ending graphics aside, I do think this is a 5-star movie, a 5 Clarence William III walking sticks movie. It's, I don't know, it's just there's so much going on. There's so much that is happening both like in the horror realm, in the effects realm, but also in the social commentary realm. And the fact that this was being done in 1995 is just, I think it's groundbreaking. I am upset that I had never seen it until a few years ago. I think this is a movie that, in that same interview with IndieWire, he says that people seem to keep finding this movie, and he's like, and that makes me really happy. And I think this is a great movie. I'm giving it 5 Clarence Williams III's walking sticks out of 5. What about you, Mary Beth?
Okay, I'm giving it 4.5. I'm so sorry, but the ending the ending knocks it down a half a star. I'm sorry. Like, it's okay, but that's it. But again, mad that I hadn't seen it before. Glad I finally have. It's so much scarier than I could have thought. I think it's incredibly well made. I think like it does that incredible well balanced thing of doing like social issues and horror in a way that is effective and also very pointed, but not like preachy. And I think that's a balance that people are still learning how to hit nowadays, especially when like elevated horror is is like always in the zeitgeist and talking about making horror political. This is an example of how you do that in an amazing way. And Clarence Williams III's fucking performance in this movie is iconic. And this is just another an anthology movie and a horror movie in general that definitely deserves more people to talk about it and see it and just appreciate all of the things that it does in such a short amount of time. So it's 4.5 for me. Sorry, clip art ending just kind of, it was a weird sour note for me. I'm sorry. But Ryan, you have the final word. How many Clarence William III walking sticks out of 5 do you give Tales from the Hood? I feel like I know your answer, but I'd love to hear it.
I feel like it is a 5. Like it's
yeah.
I fall in love with this film the more that I watch it. Like and that's rare for films that I've seen so many times like this one. Like rewatching it between today and yesterday for this, I was feeling everything all over again. There were details I was catching that I didn't catch the other million times I watched it. And it does toe that perfect line. Like, I'm happy you said that, between like teaching us something without being super preachy and still having moments that are just like good for horror fans. Like, we get like a lot of like dark thrills and chills. And I just can't suggest this film enough to people. I understand like over the course of time how it may have accidentally got overlooked based on a lot of the stuff that we talked about during the episode. But it's never too late. Like, I feel like people can check it out today and really have a great time with this film. And it's only an hour 30, right? It's only
an hour 30. It's on Shudder if you have Shudder. So it's pretty like readily available for everyone. So check it out if you want to watch an anthology, a good movie or an anthology film. It's on Shudder.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us to talk about Tales from the Hood. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you can share?
So you all can find me at Brother Ghoulish on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can find my podcast, Brother Ghoulish's Tomb, wherever podcasts are played. And Brother Ghoulish's Dragula Breakdown as well, wherever podcasts are played. And that's where I talk about the Boulay Brothers Dragula, because I am a huge fan. Yeah. And, excuse me, you can also find me haunting an underpass near you if you want to meet me in person. And if you forget any of this, check out www.brotherghoulish.com. I put everything on there in one centralized location because I do have a lot of projects that I've mentioned and also ones that I'm working on, like bringing out my first book, which is There's Something Wrong in Morganton County. So I'd love to talk with anyone horror. Just come find me and throw carcasses at me to eat while we're talking.
Perfect. And then what is the handle for Blurty Massacre?
It's at Blurty Massacre. And we're actually working on our website now, so we should be launching that pretty soon.
Cool. And then everyone, all of that is in the show notes, so you don't forget. Everything is there for you to check out.
Oh yeah.
So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Tales from the Hood? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to give us a rating, a review, and make sure you are subscribed.
Please. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.